It was supposed to be a fun sleepover at my friend Jenna's house. We were celebrating her birthday, and a few of us had gathered to stay the night. We spent the evening watching movies, eating pizza, and gossiping about school. As the night wore on, we decided to tell ghost stories, trying to scare each other with tales of the supernatural. Around midnight, we all settled into our sleeping bags in Jenna's living room. The room was dimly lit by a single lamp, casting long shadows on the walls. Just as we were drifting off to sleep, I heard a soft whisper. I thought it was one of the girls playing a prank, but when I looked around, everyone seemed to be asleep. The whispering grew louder, more insistent, like it was coming from the corner of the room. I sat up, my heart pounding, and squinted into the darkness. There, in the corner, I saw a shadowy figure standing perfectly still. It was tall and human-like, but there were no discernible features, just a dark silhouette. I nudged Jenna, who was sleeping next to me. She groggily sat up and looked where I was pointing. Her eyes widened in terror as she saw the figure too. We woke the other girls and they all saw it, frozen in place and staring back at us. One of the girls, Sarah, bravely reached for the lamp and turned it off, plunging the room into darkness. When she turned it back on, the shadow was gone. We searched the room, but there was no one there. We convinced ourselves it was just our imagination playing tricks on us, though none of us really believed it. We tried to go back to sleep, but the uneasy feeling lingered. Every creak of the house, every rustle of the wind outside made us jump. None of us got much sleep that night, and the image of that shadowy figure stayed with us long after we left Jenna's house. My friends and I had been planning a camping trip for weeks. We finally decided to spend the night in the woods behind Jake's house, setting up our tents near a small clearing. It was a perfect night, clear skies, a warm fire, and the sounds of nature all around us. As the night grew darker, we shared stories and roasted marshmallows, enjoying the freedom of being out in the wilderness. Around midnight, we heard a rustling in the bushes nearby. We assumed it was just an animal, but the noise persisted, growing louder and closer. Jake decided to check it out, grabbing a flashlight and heading towards the sound. The rest of us followed, more out of curiosity than bravery. As we approached the source of the noise, the flashlight beam caught something unusual, a tattered old tent, partially hidden by the undergrowth. We exchanged nervous glances. Jake called out, but there was no response. The tent looked abandoned, but there was something unsettling about it. We cautiously approached, our hearts pounding in our chests. Inside the tent, we found remnants of a campsite, an old sleeping bag, a rusted lantern, and some weathered notebooks. Flipping through the pages, we discovered that they belonged to a man named Tom, who had been camping here years ago. The last entry was dated over a decade ago and spoke of strange noises and feeling watched. Suddenly, a chill ran down my spine. I turned to see a shadowy figure standing just beyond the edge of our flashlight's beam. It was a man, tall and gaunt, with hollow eyes that seemed to bore into us. We froze, too scared to move or speak. The figure slowly raised a finger to his lips, signaling for silence. Then he stepped back into the darkness and disappeared. Panic set in and we ran back to our campsite, huddling together by the fire. We debated packing up and leaving, but it was too dark to navigate the woods safely. Instead, we kept the fire burning bright and took turns to keep watch. Every rustle of leaves or snap of a twig had us on edge, fearing the return of the mysterious figure. As dawn broke, we wasted no time packing up and heading back to Jake's house. We told his parents what had happened, and they contacted the local authorities. A search of the area revealed no trace of the man or the old tent. The experience left us shaken, and we vowed never to camp in those woods again. The memory of that hollow-eyed figure haunted our dreams, a chilling reminder of that creepy camper who might still be out there, watching and waiting. My friend Lily had always been fascinated by dolls. Her room was filled with them, sitting on shelves, staring out with their glassy eyes. When she invited me and a few others for a sleepover, I was a bit uneasy about spending a night surrounded by those lifeless faces. But I didn't want to be rude, so I agreed to go. The night started off normal enough. We played games, ate snacks, and talked about school. Eventually, we decided to play hide and seek. Lily suggested we play in the dark for added excitement. We turned off all the lights and used our phones as flashlights, giggling as we crept around the house. During one of the rounds, I found myself hiding in Lily's bedroom. I crouched behind her bed, trying to stay as quiet as possible. That's when I heard it, a faint whispering, almost too soft to make out. It sounded like it was coming from the shelf where Lily's dolls were displayed. I inched closer, trying to hear what the whispering was saying. As I got closer, I could make out a few words, something about help and trapped. My blood ran cold. I wanted to bolt out of the room, but my curiosity held me there. Suddenly, one of the dolls turned its head towards me, its eyes glinting in the dim light from my phone. I stumbled backward, knocking over a lamp. The noise brought Lily and the others running. When they saw the look on my face, they knew something was wrong. I pointed to the doll, trying to explain what I had heard and seen. Lily picked up the doll, examining it closely. She shook it and out fell a tiny old-fashioned voice recorder. We played the recording and it was the same whispering I had heard. Lily's face went pale. She told us she had no idea how the recorder got there or who made the recording. We were all freaked out and no one wanted to stay in that room any longer. We spent the rest of the night in the living room, too scared to sleep. The next day, Lily threw the doll and the recorder away. But the experience haunted us, making us question what else might be hidden among her seemingly innocent collection. It was a rainy night when my friends and I gathered at Lisa's house for a sleepover. Her parents were out of town, so we had a place to ourselves. After an evening of pizza, movies, and laughter, we decided to explore the attic, a place Lisa claimed was haunted. The attic was filled with old furniture, dusty boxes, and forgotten family heirlooms. As we rummaged through the clutter, we found an old, ornate mirror tucked away in a corner. The frame was intricately carved with strange symbols, and the glass was slightly foggy. Lisa told us a story her grandmother had shared about how the mirror had been in the family for generations and was rumored to be cursed. Supposedly, anyone who looked into it alone at midnight would see something terrifying. Intrigued and skeptical, we decided to test the legend. Midnight was only a few minutes away, so we brought the mirror downstairs to the living room. We all gathered around, nervously glancing at the clock as the minute hand inched closer to 12. When the clock struck midnight, we dared Lisa to go first. She hesitated but finally agreed. She stood in front of the mirror, staring into it, and we watched in tense silence. For a few moments, nothing happened. Then Lisa gasped, her eyes widening in fear. She stumbled back, dropping the mirror, which miraculously didn't shatter. "What did you see?" we all asked, our voices trembling. Lisa shook her head, too scared to speak. Finally, she whispered, "I saw myself, but different. My reflection was smiling, but it wasn't my smile. It felt evil." Despite our fear, curiosity got the better of us. One by one, we took turns looking into the mirror. Each of us saw something different. Our reflections twisted in horrifying ways, with dark, menacing expressions. It was as if the mirror was showing us a sinister version of ourselves. Terrified, we decided to put the mirror back in the attic. As we carried it up the stairs, the air grew colder, and we heard faint whispers echoing around us. We hurried to shove the mirror back into its corner and left it in the attic, slamming the door behind us. That night, we all slept in the same room, too scared to be alone. Every creak and groan of the old house made us jump. We stayed awake, whispering about what we had seen, trying to make sense of it. In the morning, Lisa's parents returned, and we left without saying a word about the mirror. None of us ever spoke about that night again, but the memory of our twisted reflections haunted us, a reminder of the darkness lurking within the mirror, and perhaps within ourselves. For my friend Jack's birthday, his parents rented a cabin in the woods for a weekend getaway. Jack invited a few of us to stay over, promising a night of adventure and fun. The cabin was cozy, with a fireplace and plenty of room for all of us. We spent the evening roasting marshmallows and telling scary stories around the fire. As the night deepened, we decided to explore the woods a bit, daring each other to venture further from the safety of the cabin. Armed with flashlights, we set out into the darkness, laughing and trying to scare one another. After a while, we stumbled upon an old abandoned shed. The door creaked open and curiosity got the better of us. Inside, the shed was filled with old tools, rusted and covered in cobwebs. But what caught our attention was a set of strange symbols carved into the wooden walls. They looked like some sort of runes or sigils, and none of us could figure out what they meant. We joked about it being a witch's cabin, but there was an uneasy tension in the air. Suddenly, we heard rustling outside. Our flashlights flickered as we spun around, trying to see what had caused the noise. The wind howled through the trees, but there was something else. A low, guttural growl that sent chills down my spine. We decided it was time to head back to the cabin. As we walked, the growling seemed to follow us, getting closer and more menacing. We broke into a run, not stopping until we were safely inside, with the door locked behind us. Breathless and scared, we tried to laugh it off, convincing ourselves it was just an animal. But then we noticed something strange. One of the symbols from the shed was now carved into the door of the cabin. None of us had done it, and there was no way it could have appeared there on its own. That night, sleep was impossible. Every noise outside seemed amplified, and the growling we had heard earlier echoed in our minds. We huddled together in the living room, jumping at every creak and whisper of the wind. When morning finally came, we packed up and left as quickly as we could. The weekend was cut short, but none of us were disappointed. The experience left us shaken, and we never spoke about what happened in those woods again. The symbols and the growling remained a mystery, a haunting reminder of the terrifying night in the cabin.